The reason that I got involved goes back about 4 years ago. I was living in Texas, and a buddy of mine who was down there was working a minimum wage job at a trucking company. And he was saving up money for college. And his phone rang one day, and somebody from a company called Halliburton was on the other line. You know Halliburton? Depending on the crowd, there's either just booing or straight up laughter. So I'm always curious to hear which way it's going to go. So unfortunately, Halliburton called my friend, and they said that they would pay him $90,000 for 1 year if he agreed to go to Iraq for them to drive a truck for the private sector, for the company. And he called me, and he called a few of our other friends, and he said, what do you guys think I should do? And we talked about it for a really long time, and the only conclusion we could come to was that it was a really sad day that the world's richest, most powerful country could only offer those two options for a friend of ours who wanted to go to college, either minimum wage or $90,000 in a war zone. So the cynical side of me got even more cynical. And I thought, well, maybe I should believe these CNN stories about how people our age can never make a difference. And I just kind of sat there. And thankfully, 4 weeks later, I had the DNC on television. This was in 2004. And I heard somebody talk about how there shouldn't be blue states and red states. We should focus on being the United States. And I kind of looked up from the couch. I thought, well, this guy needs to run for president. Certainly not the only one to have that thought back in 2004. So when Senator Obama decided to run, my friends and I did a little research and looked at the fact that he was a community organizer on the south side of Chicago with folks who were laid off by Maytag, that he was a civil rights lawyer, that he taught constitutional law for 10 years. And for that, we kind of sat there and went, well, wait a second, wouldn't it be amazing to have a president who actually read the Constitution? That'd be nice. So for all of those reasons, we signed up to volunteer, and these 3 days in Iowa were met with incredible supporters and volunteers and people who were working tirelessly to make sure that Senator Obama was going to win. And I was so inspired by them that I decided to stay. So I moved to Des Moines for about a month and a half. And the disclaimer that I really should give all of you is that there was a writer's strike going on in California. So I was unemployed. I was out of a job. So it wasn't such a bad thing to do. But something that a lot of us realized when we were out there in Iowa had to do with a little bit of a discrepancy we were getting from the media. CNN and MTV News were running these stories questioning whether or not young voters are actually going to come out and vote. And on the flip side, we were getting these stories about things like MySpace, Facebook, and YouTube. How many of you have seen a video on YouTube in the last, 3 or 4 days? Okay. So YouTube's a free service. And they make $7.5 million a month in advertising revenue because of how many of us collectively use that website. MySpace and Facebook are even better examples. MySpace was sold recently for $580 million. And Facebook was started by 3 college guys in their 20s up in Boston. These 3 guys are still in their 20s. And Facebook was valued at $1.6 billion recently. And we sat there and we went, well, wait a second, this is wealth that now we have created for our peers, billions of dollars in wealth, just by sitting in front of our computers, watching fun videos and tagging photos, and that's about it. And if we have the power to make billions of dollars in wealth for these companies and our own peers, think about the power that we have to change the face of a presidential election. And not just one presidential election, but the way in which politics operate in this country. So what you saw in Iowa was a huge shift in the way that people voted. The average age of caucus going in 2004 was 65 years of age. And this past January, the youth vote increased by 150%. So we answered the question to all the cynics. We showed them that collectively, no matter what your age demographic was, we were going to come out and vote. And we've met college and university students and their parents, and these folks are really struggling. We've got friends who are fighting overseas in Iraq. We can't afford health care. Our parents have lost jobs to companies overseas. The list goes on and on. And that's kind of the reason a lot of us have been doing this. That's the reason that we're inviting you to continue the volunteer efforts. I want to end with one story that was really inspiring to a lot of us. And that was a man who walked into Barack's office 3 days before the Iowa caucus out in Des Moines. He was about 70 years old. He had a cowboy hat and cowboy boots on. He was about this tall. Yeah. His hat was beige, I think, not as brown. I actually envied both of your hats. And he came in and he said, you guys need to stop working. So we put down the phones and we looked up from the computers. He said, just for 2 minutes, I want you to know that as long as I've been alive, he said, as long as I can remember, and he was the head of the Iowa Farmers Union, he said, politicians have come to the state of Iowa every 4 years. And these politicians come and the politicians make promises to family farmers, the politicians make promises to college students and environmental groups. And the election takes place and the politicians leave. 4 years go by and a new set of politicians come to the state. He said, before you go back to work, I just want you to look up the definition of the word politician and then look up the definition of the word statesman. Because this is the first time in my life, he said, that I've had the chance to know a true statesman. And he took his hat and he turned around and we all had tears in our eyes and we looked up these two definitions, and that's your homework assignment. When you go home and you share with your friends why you came to this rally and why you signed up to volunteer, I want you to, with them, look up those two definitions between what it means to be a politician and a true statesman. And I hope that you don't do it just to continue to prove these cynics wrong. I hope that you'll do it for folks like my friend in Texas, who turned down that job at Halliburton. And the last time I talked to him, he was still making minimum wage and was still trying to afford a college education. There has got to be a better option than the last 8 years of George Bush and the next 4 potentially John McCain.